Love that energy back there. She should be in the student section. But hey, we are seeing God do all kinds of things here at Vision. It's our second week, and God is teaching us stuff, especially through our students and through our kids and through our preschoolers. And now is our time. Take a couple minutes, sit back, and look in God's Word to see what He has to teach us as adults and as students. You know, we started this series last week called Blueprint, believing that God has a vision for each of us. The great thing is He wants us to live that vision out successfully. He doesn't want us to stumble along. He wants us to live in victory and where we're content and we're having challenges, but we're overcoming them. So where our blueprint, where literally at the start of time, he looked at a blueprint and said, you know, I've got one for you, and I've got one for you, and I've got one for you. And He looks at this thing and says, there's an ideal way to map this thing out and to live it. He says, if you walk along with me, I'll help you figure it out. And as we started last week in part 1, saying we got to align our heart. Remember I had the level up here? So we got to align our heart with God's heart. Because God says, I know this blueprint. I know the best way for you to live it out and to be successful by His standards. He said, align your heart with mine and I'll walk with you. I'll help you figure that out. And now you say, well, man, what kind of vision you talking about? What kind of blueprints? I think you know in your heart something that stirs you and says, you know what, I wish maybe I could make a job change and do something that I would get even more satisfaction out of. Or you know what, I wish I could help my child grow up and have a better chance to learn about values and integrity than I did. Or I want my marriage to be stronger. Or I want my friendships to be in a way where, you know what, I have friends that really matter. Or, you know, I have goals and dreams that maybe I never even told anybody about. And God says, you know what, I got some of that on your blueprint. I want to help you to live those things out successfully. And again, it's not the world's measurement of success, but it's God's measurement. And in week 2, today, we're going to talk about a tricky subject, waiting. Because everybody's like, man, I don't want to wait in life. Waiting is, well, I'll talk about the emotions of waiting in a minute, but I'm sure when I toss that word out there, you don't think, man, I get excited about waiting. Because we just don't. The way we're wired, we don't. So when I think about what we can teach you through Nehemiah and Blueprint, and today about waiting, I want you to take it even beyond our time this morning. We got our host teams that have our takeaway card. If you did not get your notes today, just raise your hand. They're going to be walking around here. We want you to have a card that we've designed to help you while you're in here, so you can jot down some notes. But also, during your week, my goal for you is for you to spend time with God. Because the reality is, I'm going to try to give you something to kind of chew on this morning, something to eat, but you need time with God every day. So you'll see at the bottom of that card some things like the verse that Courtney read, some of the verses I go through, some of the things I refer to. I want you to get in your Bible this week or get in your device of choice and look at it on your iPad or your phone or whatever. That's great. Take the word with you, and this week on your takeaway card, dig into it, and plus you can watch the sermons online. By Wednesday, we've got these messages online so you can watch them, and I encourage you even to take that link, shoot it to a friend, and say, hey, God's got something He wants to do in your life. And you know what? We can go to Vision together and learn about it. So that takeaway is our gift to you, as well as we even got some construction pencils left from last week, which was kind of our gift from Lowe's, gave it to us. We say, you know what? We're going to take construction pencils home to know that when we see those this week with Vision logo on there, that God wants to do a work in our lives. You can stop by Next Steps table, grab a free pencil. And if you're a first timer here, definitely stop back there. You're taking home some cake, cookies, or muffins. That makes everybody smile when they got those. So we definitely want to love on our first time guests. Now today, what to do in the waiting. I want to talk for a minute about waiting, and then we'll go over our bottom line. But you know, with waiting, I don't think most people, that excites them. Because when you think about, say, take a look at this picture. You go shopping, and you head over to Franklin Square, and you're in line, and you're like, wait a second, I've got things to do. I want to buy my thing, and I want to go. And you're standing there at Kohl's or outside of Best Buy, and you're like, waiting? That's not fun. Okay, how about, how many people we got who work across the river, over there in Charlotte? Now, Annie, so over there, so you're probably used to seeing this image sometimes, when something goes awry on 85, and you're sitting there thinking, waiting, man, I got so much to do. I got to get home. This does not feel good to be waiting. And then, of course, one of our favorite places to go, which always inspires us, man, who's ever had a situation in DMV that has really tested your patience and your spiritual maturity. Yes, it has. I've been there. So our bottom line today, you can see it on your takeaway, see it on the screen. God is working in our lives, especially in the waiting. He's working in our lives, especially in the waiting. Now, no, I didn't put on there, he's working in our lives even in the waiting, because it'd kind of be like God saying, okay, you got some waiting to do this week. Let's figure out a way to work in that. He says, no. I'm going to strategically use times in your life when you have to wait. And so especially in the waiting, I'm going to teach you things. So let's dig into it. If you brought your Bible or your electronic weapon of choice, open that thing up to Nehemiah. And if you hadn't been there in a while, go to Psalms, which is right about the middle, and then tap just a little bit to the left, and you can find it. Nehemiah is not a big book, but there's some interesting things in here that we are learning. And we talked about last week, this guy Nehemiah had an interesting job. At first glance, you say, pretty cool job, because what he did is he ate food and drank for a living. The problem in that was he was the one who was testing it to see if it was poisoned. So usually if he's going to have a bad day, it's going to be his last day, because somebody poisoned it. He protected the king, but as cupbearer to the king, he had a dangerous job, but a unique job. So Nehemiah was originally from Israel and Jerusalem. He'd gone away. He'd been in exile, really in captive. He was a slave. Things happened through time to where most of the people from exile went back. Nehemiah was still working with the king, and he had some people come to him and said, hey, Nehemiah, we want to let you know how things are back in the homeland, back in Jerusalem. And the guys had a bad report for him. Said the walls are torn down. They had not been rebuilt. People are struggling. And it hurt Nehemiah to where it started to stir something in him that we see happening in this book called Nehemiah. So if you would, take a look with me. Nehemiah chapter 1. Let me read you a couple verses here in chapter 1. It says, the words of Nehemiah, son of Hekeliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. So again, he's saying, hey guys, tell me, how are things back home? They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down. Its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. So clearly, he is in pain. Like we talked about last week, there was a problem. He wanted to be part of the solution. It grips him. And I think we can relate to that when we have some type of vision that's out there of a job that matters, raising our kids right, an addiction we have in our life, some type of health issue we got. And we say, okay, God, there's something gripping me. I want to deal with that. But now jump to chapter 2. I wanted to read you these couple verses real quick. In the start of chapter 2, it says, in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before, so the king asked me, why does your face look so sad when you are not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart. Now this is an interesting moment, because Nehemiah, as the cupbearer, he was supposed to protect the king, but also all the guys working for the king are supposed to be positive. Smiles, jokes, fun all the time. You don't come in there in a down mood, because the king would basically say, hey, bring me somebody in a good mood. Go ahead and take him away, dungeon, off ahead, whatever. I want staff around me. It's going to be encouraging. So for Nehemiah, even to give this posture was strange. So it says, I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, may the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my fathers are buried lie in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire? And the king said to me, what is it you want? Now I want to talk about timing, because when we started the story, there was a particular date they gave us, and I know we can't necessarily relate to what those words mean, those months, but let me tell you, from the start to this moment has been 4 months. So Nehemiah, he gets this bad report, and it hits him deep in the gut. Like we talked about last week again, so painful for him, he wanted to act on that. Sometimes like we do with a vision God gives us, with a dream or a plan we feel like God's given us, and we want to act on that, and then we have to wait. And Nehemiah had to wait days, weeks, months, And I think in those days, we're going to see today, he had to make some choices about what he was going to do with that time. Because we go through different emotions when we wait, different emotions. I took some time this week to think about that. What type of emotions you feel when you wait? Like how about these students? I know some of our students have been waiting to hear back from colleges. Are you getting in that college? Are you getting that financial aid? Where are you going to go? What are you going to do? And you get some frustration. Or maybe you even get fear or anger. You say, God, I want to move forward on this vision you've given me. I want to get that job that can matter. I want to kick this habit that bothers me week after week. And you have these different emotions. Maybe emotion is jealousy. You say, wait, what about that guy over there? He's moving forward on his vision, and I'm having to wait. How about a confusion or even a sadness of saying, God, I feel like I'm ready for you. I think I'm aligning my heart like you said to do. Why am I waiting? How long am I going to wait? With Nehemiah, we know where the story goes, but he didn't. For all he knew, it was going to be years or never. But we see the story 4 months later, his moment comes. And when you see there in verse 4, when the king says, what is it that you want? That's what we're talking about next week. Because that's going to be about getting the project started. That there is a time of waiting. I'm telling you, if your heart's aligned with God and you manage the waiting correctly, the time will come to get the project started. In fact, I'll give you a little sneak peek. Next Sunday, you don't want to be 5 minutes late. Because what we're opening with next Sunday, you're going to walk in saying, are they playing that? And we're like, yep, we're playing a song that is going to kind of get you thinking about getting that project started. So you don't want to miss that. All right, now this waiting. Let's talk about his role in this thing, because he does not waste it. Even though sometimes we may feel like saying, God, this time is wasted. My energy is wasted. My emotion, I'm ready to move. I want to do something. I'm telling you, God does not waste your waiting. And in fact, he uses a word that I love. He actually refines you during that. He refines you. Because when you think about the refining process, and I know probably most of us aren't really too aware of what that's about taking a metal and heating it up a certain way to where it can be shaped and it can be formed into something else. And you know what? You can't microwave that. You can't hurry up the heating or hurry up the cooling. It has a specific time it takes to be refined. And what I've found in that, both in Nehemiah's life and in my life and people I've talked to, is that refining, it strengthens your ownership in that project. Just like with vision, this vision for a church, before it even had a name, it started back in May of 2013. And God stirred something in me that day. I thought, let's go. I'm ready. Okay, God, let me align my heart. Let's get the project started. God said, wait a second. There needs to be a time of waiting, not only to refine you, Matt, but also to ingrain in me a rich ownership to this project. So that, you know what, if someone comes in here and tries to wrestle away this vision, I'll tell you what, or straight, they are not taking it out of our hands, because we fought for this. We have given for this. We have sacrificed to build stuff and shape stuff and train things and move chairs. And this waiting period, it refined both our vision and our ownership of it to where God did something in that waiting period that we could never have microwaved. Now this waiting, again, you can't hurry that process because God knows what he wants to accomplish in it. And in fact, I want to show you a quick video. Have we got any fans who used to watch Lost? When Lost is on? Okay, we're Lost fans at our house. We like that. So what I want to show you here is a quick clip from kind of the philosopher on the island, Locke. And he's talking to his buddy Charlie, who's wrestling with something. And I believe Charlie, he wants to get through the waiting, but Locke sees things differently. So take a look at this.
Something wrong, Charlie?
Yeah. Jack. There's been an accident in the caves. Jack's trapped in a cave-in.
Is anyone trying to get him out?
Yeah, there's a bunch of people there now.
And why aren't you with him? You didn't come here to tell me about Jack, did you?
Oh, my stash, look. I can't stand feeling like this.
Come here. Let me show you something. What do you suppose is in that cocoon, Charlie?
I don't know, a butterfly, I guess?
It's much more beautiful than that. That's a moth cocoon. It's ironic butterflies get all the attention, but moths, they spin silk. They're stronger, they're faster.
That's wonderful, but
You see this little hole? This moth's just about to emerge. It's in there right now, struggling. It's digging its way through the thick hide of the cocoon. Now, I could help it. Take my knife, gently widen the opening, and the moth would be free. But it would be too weak to survive. The struggle is nature's way of strengthening it. Now, this is the second time you've asked me for your drugs back. Ask me again, and it's yours.
Okay, so if you heard Locke, now he said that struggle is nature's way of preparing us to survive. I'd say struggle, honestly, is God's way. That we're in that waiting, He's going to make you struggle so much in that waiting that it's going to shape you. To where you thought you were ready to move forward, honestly, you weren't. Just like 2 years ago, I thought I was ready to do this. I wasn't. And God said, you know what, I'm going to refine you in that. And you know, that takes us to today's visual. Last week we had the level. This week, okay, it's this clamp. Now I admit, I don't do a whole lot of building. I told you that last week. If I build something, it's for our family because it's not going to come out exactly right, and that's okay in our house. But if you pay me to build you something, I'm not going to take that job because it's not going to come out right. But this clamp, and you know what this clamp does, it's when you say maybe take a couple pieces of wood and you want to maybe glue these. You're working on some project, you're going to glue them together. You say, glue them. Okay, let's move forward. You're like, wait a second. No, you pick those up, you know, it's going to come apart. Well, instead, you take 2 pieces of wood and you use this clamp, and when you squeeze this down, you know, it squeezes and it holds. And the reality is, then you have to wait. You can't microwave that glue or whatever you're working on with the clamp. You have to wait. Maybe come back the next day, maybe a couple days, depending on what you're working on. But I think God, He takes that clamp and He gives you a choice. And He says, you want to do a great project for me? It's going to take some of this clamp. And He's going to move that thing up, and He's going to stick you in there, and He's going to tighten it, and I'll say, He's going to let you slide out of it. He's not going to force you to stay in it. But if you say, okay, God, I will submit to that, He's going to do things. Now, on your takeaway card, you'll see 2 different men in the Bible, and I want you to take time this week to look into their lives. The first one, his name is Saul. He's from the Old Testament, and if you know anything about Saul, he was the first king of Israel. The Israelites for years had, in essence, been ruled by God, and they wanted a man to do it. And God, he gave them their choice. He gave them Saul. Well, Saul comes up in a situation, you'll see in the chapter I referenced, you can get in there this week and read about Saul, to where he has to wait to do the right thing. They're in a battle. He's trying to decide what to do in it. They're supposed to wait for the prophet to come, and he waits 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, and he finally says, whatever. And he, in essence, throws that clamp down, says, we're going forward. And as soon as he does, the prophet shows up, says, what are you doing? God told you to wait. And you see, that is the start of the end for Saul, because he made that choice not to wait. The second guy, earlier in the Bible, a man named Joseph. Joseph, you know his story. Man, he was in a pit, out of a pit. He was taken as a slave, faraway land, and actually was kind of what would appear to be on a good path until, even in his integrity, he got thrown in jail. He gets thrown in jail, And I think what God was doing in there was saying, okay, Joseph, are you going to submit to the clamp? Are you going to wait on me? And Joseph in prison, he chooses to let God squeeze him and prepare him for a couple years. It wasn't just 7 days, a couple years. And like Nehemiah, when Joseph went through it, he didn't know the end of the story. So he didn't know how long it would take, but he submitted to God's work in his life so that when his moment came, when it was time to get that project started, he was ready. In fact, he ascended to such a place of power that God used him to do amazing things. So I encourage you this week, get in the Bible. Take a look at Saul, take a look at Joseph, and when you think about those guys, try to relate it to your life and how you handle the waiting. Now, one other thing I want you to consider is a puzzle. Okay? If sure you probably got one of these at your house, you know, Doug and Melissa, and they got these great puzzles, and this is my daughter Elena's. And when God looks at us in the waiting, a lot of times what he wants us to do is to get his perspective and realize that, you know what, in that box, there's tons of pieces. 100 pieces, 1,000 pieces, whatever the puzzle, when he looks at our life and he says, you know what, I hate to break this to you, but you're just one piece of the puzzle. I'm just one piece of the puzzle. He said, you know what, I'm moving other pieces on the board. I'm putting things together, and you know what, your piece, I'm not ready to put it down yet because I've got to put this in place and this in place and this in place. So while you're waiting, you're saying, okay, God, shape me so when it's my time, click, I fit right into your picture. I tell you, that is spiritual maturity. When you can step back and say, God, I'm not the whole puzzle. Because a lot of times, if we admit it, we think we're the whole puzzle. And God says, you know what? You're just one piece of that puzzle. So I want to say then, okay, God, how can we take action in the waiting? Truly, what can we do? Because you know what? If you're like me, I don't want to just sit on my hands. Okay, I'll relax for a time, but in general, I want to be moving. I want to be making progress. And I feel like, is it really progress if I'm just waiting? And God says, yes, I want you to be refined so that when this clamp is ready to release, you're the puzzle piece I want you to be. He says, maybe do research. He says, maybe you need to financially align yourself so when it's time to move, you're in shape to do it. He said, maybe you need to be better in health condition. Maybe you need to have built relationships. Maybe you need to have read certain things or talked to certain people so when your moment comes, you are ready. And in fact, one resource I wanted to encourage you guys is called Holy Ambition. It's by Chip Ingram, great teacher out of Atlanta and California. And he has taught so much for me and my wife that as we have gone down the course toward projects and felt like we were waiting, God said, take this book and work through it in a way where you can read and think about every stage of the journey, what you should be experiencing. So again, whether it's, man, I just want to parent my kids better, or I want to have that different job, or I want a health change, or God says, take that time. Again, God's not wasting it, and he wants us to take action in it. And here's my final thing on this. There's a warning. There's a warning. Many visions die in this stage. They die. You heard from God, and he said, look, man, I've got something that stirs your heart. He says, it's a part of your blueprint, and I want you to live it out and be successful. But this waiting period, he says, a lot of times, you're not going to wait long enough, the vision dies. Or maybe you're back here and you say, God, I've got a vision. I want to tell everybody about it. And you go up to a friend and say, I've got this vision to do this, whatever. And they look at you and say, man, you're not qualified to do that. Or that's too scary. Or you couldn't do that. And you know what? You don't know enough about it. You don't have enough refinement for the owning of it yet. You don't know how to answer them. And you kind of shrink back and the vision dies. So in this stage, when God, he wants to entrust something important to you, but he says, walk with me at my pace, and while you're waiting, I'll be refining you. Now, there's several families in our church that have gone through processes just like this. You'll be hearing from some of them throughout the series, but we got one in particular that I wanted you to hear from, and I'm going to welcome Tabitha to come back up. Tabitha High, she's our production director. And Tabitha and Kier and their family they went through a project within their blueprint that caused them to wait. And in fact, I asked Tabitha to share for a couple minutes about it, and then we're going to use a creative element to kind of enhance that. So Tabitha, if you would, tell us your story.
Thanks, Matt. Our vision, our dream that we wanted to accomplish was the dream of adopting. We already had 3 biological children, so most people don't do that, but we did. So that obviously had to come from God because it's a pretty crazy dream. But we chose to adopt, and we started the process being told that it would be 6 or 8 months. It was an older child. We didn't want to go through the baby thing again. And so it would be quick. Like, yay! Just like a pregnancy, 9 months. We'll take that. That's fine. But we had to wait. We had delays. We had lost documents. We had things that we were told that weren't true. It just seems like every time we would take 1 step forward, we would take 2 steps back. And so we waited a total of 2 years for what we expected to be 6 months. We adopted a little boy from Honduras whose name is Mario, and you'll get to meet him in just a moment. We were presented with him and just knew in our hearts that he was meant for us and that we would do whatever it took to make him part of our family. It was a very difficult time. There were times that I would literally cry out to God and ask him, why? This is your thing that you called us to do. We didn't just decide this on our own. We're being obedient to you, Lord. You called us to this. We said yes. Why are you taking so long? Why does something that is so beautiful as adoption, he adopted us as his children, so this is his plan. Why does it take so long? Why can't it be faster? Why can't it just go, go, go? We never could understand it. And honestly, to this day, that's one of those things that I plan to ask God when I get there. And I say, you say in your word that we should take care of the widows and the orphans. And we tried to do that, Lord, but you made it take so long. There were so many nights of tears, so many friends praying and encouraging us that I could never have made it without. But he finally came home. He will be here 2 years, February the 14th. So he has been with us. And anyone who meets Mario knows that he was destined to be part of our family. And when you meet him, he will say, hi, I'm Mario. I'm from Honduras. And so he's very proud of his heritage. You may not understand him, but that's who he is. And I would just invite right now, I want to have my friends Logan and Courtney come up because I think this song that I want to share with you really says more than I can say. And this was a song that we actually did. We did an adoption benefit concert in 2012. And this was one of the songs that we chose because it was just a perfect picture of what our wait was. And you may recognize the song, but also during the song, I want you to take a look at some of the pictures of our story, and hopefully this will touch you as it has touched me as I pulled it together. So. Courtney was part of that benefit concert as well, and helped us to raise some money to bring him home. Adoption was expensive, very expensive, so we had to do a lot to raise funds, but God provided. And I will say that when he does call you to something, he will show up. It may not be when you want him to. It may not be in your timing, but it's in his timing. And his timing is always perfect. So let's sing this. Just listen as I sing this song. Taking every step in obedience while I'm waiting. I'll serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship taking every step in obedience. While I'm waiting, I will serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship while I'm waiting. I will not fade. I'll be running the race even while I wait. And I will move ahead, bold and confident. I'll be taking every step in obedience. Yeah, while I'm waiting, I'll serve you while I'm waiting. I'll worship while I'm waiting. I will not fail. I will serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship while I'm waiting. I will serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship while I'm waiting on you. I will serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship while I'm waiting. I will serve you while I'm waiting. I will worship while I'm waiting.
Well, as I get ready to wrap it up, I'd like to invite Kier, come on up, and Isaac, Mallory, Elena, and of course, Mr. Mario, coming up here. And this is a real life family. They do life like we do. They go through things. They have challenges, and they waited, and they brought Mr. Honduras home. And he is such a blessing to all of us. He is. And I tell you, you guys as a family, what we've seen God do in you and through you is a testimony to what we're talking about in Blueprint, that God will put something on your heart. He will give you a desire, a passion to want to do something about that. And when you align your heart and you go through that waiting, that's just part of the process. We're going to keep digging into it next week. But in a moment, I'm going to pray, and a couple things I want you to think about. Number one, I want you to figure out, do you know this Jesus? Because each week we're having new families come in, so we'll have folks come in here that don't know this God we're talking about, that sent his son Jesus for us to give us a passion and do a project like that. And then if you're sitting there saying, man, I just need somebody to pray with me. We got a spot in the back. And John, if you raise your hand, John Greenwell's back there at our prayer table, and that's where you can go to get a little blue card, either fill out a prayer need or to let us know about a spiritual decision. If you want to get to know Jesus, if you just need prayer, any of those needs, John's back there to serve you after I pray. And then, of course, like we said throughout today as well, a key part of this journey is walking it with other people. So we'll have a table over here by the curtain. You can meet some small group leaders and say, you know what? I just want somebody to walk with on this journey. Let's figure this out. I'm so glad you've been here today. We'll continue next week. I want you to invite a friend. Bring them with you as we continue through Blueprint. So if you would, close your eyes. Let's pray together.